How's it going? So this is the 3D model viewer uh, being released by Win Condition Studios. So what we have here is essentially a kind of in the name, it's pretty self-explanatory. We have a 3D model viewer in the form of a 2D widget, and I'm going to go ahead and lump in a pretty basic interaction system, and this is all able to be put onto any character. We'll go over the setup of that here in a second, but this is just to show you that we have a differentiation between um, holdable items. So this one is not a holdable item, but it is a click interactable item. This one is a holdable item as well as click interactable. So here you can see, and I just have this simply keybound on P to clear that mesh. But you'll also see that we have some that are not click interactable. So let's say you have a first person shooter or something like that, something that's not using the mouse to click. We want you to also be able to use uh, this component on those types of characters as well. So here you see we can press E. We still get our functioning 3D model viewer, and this one is a holdable item, whereas this one is not. So again, fully functioning. Um, One thing to also add, they also do all come with a slider, and that it will really be it for the overview here. So we also do have so we'll also go over the setup. Excuse me. So the first thing you will need is a nav mesh. We're just using the simple move to get your character from point A to point B. Um, Let me get into the character here. So let's see. So aside from that simple move to, some of the other things. You will need to add just a simple static mesh to your character, which is this held mesh here. It may be easier to keep that, the name convention. If you want to change it, it's up to you. Just make sure you do swap out the variable as necessary. Um, the next thing is you're going to want to add your uh, this BPC item viewer interaction component. Bit of a mouthful of a name, but it still works and is very descriptive in what you're doing with this component essentially. Once that's added, you want to also go to class defaults. And on class defaults, you can add your, class settings. And on class settings, you can add the interface that will also come with this. So we have BPI, Item Viewer Interaction Interface. Once that is attached, um, let's see, you want to come in here and I'll show you what these do. So this is just the basic, here as the text says, this is where you'll check your character's movement inputs that you want to cancel your movement towards an interactable object. This is an example provided for the character I used, and yours will more than likely be different here. So what this does, essentially, so if I come back to my character and I say I want to move to this, well, when you do simple move tos and things, it doesn't override it. So with this, we're just taking the jump here, and the jump will cancel it. So whatever your movement will be for your character is essentially what's going to go into this interface function. We also have the get interaction component, and this is just to make sure that you don't have a null value somehow. Um, and it's kind of just its own little safeguard the uh, for the component and everything else you need to do. Um, but yeah, with that, um, the only other things that you would have to add to your character are just simply a B can interact and a actor uh, type variable here. Once you have done that, everything else should flow naturally. There's a little bit of setup the uh, on the meshes here. So for example, you do need to set it on a per mesh instance. So every time you create this blueprint that is our actor, you need to set the mesh. You need to set whether they are, let's go ahead and stop here. Whether they take in click interactions, and if this is false, then you'll know that it needs to be input interactions instead. In this case, for this project, I have it set to E, but it can be whatever your character uses. The same goes for holdable item. So if it is holdable, it will take the item and put it in your hand. And if it is not holdable, it will not. That's actually a good point there, is that there's one last thing that you do need to add. Whatever character it is that you have needs to also have a socket that will attach to. So here I have added the socket onto this. Excuse the typo. I've added the socket onto this. I believe it was this one. Yeah. So it's hand R socket that I'm personally using. Whatever socket you use for your character, you need to make sure that you take this and put it in the correct the correct node that is right here. Simply attach component to component. That's your held mesh that as we said, we went over earlier. You need to add the held mesh. And then whatever socket name it is that you create on your character skeletal mesh is what will go into this input here. And that's really about it. Um, thanks for thanks for coming and enjoying the product.